Welcome to Stroke Forward. My name is Marcia Moran. For the next 40 minutes or so, we are going to talk about things that stroke survivors, or any brain injury survivor, deals with. If you look at me today, you probably don't see a person who had a stroke, but I feel it. My body functions differently. Do I think I will get back to 100%? Yes, because to think differently is to admit defeat. We will talk to all sorts of people who have been there, from survivors to caretakers to doctors, nurses, therapists, friends, and family who have seen us at our weakest. They have cheered us with their victories, no matter how large or how small. How did we get here? That's what this show is going to tell you. Colleen M. Harmeling is the Persis E. Rockwood Associate Producer of Marketing at Florida State University. Colleen's research focuses on stakeholder engagement and customer experience design with an emphasis on the role of morality in consumption and consumer healthcare decision-making. Her research appears in top journals including Journal of Marketing Research, Journal of Marketing, Harvard Business Review, Journal of Academy of Marketing Science, Journal of International Business Studies, and Marketing Science Institute Working Paper Series. She is an area editor for Journal of Academy of Marketing Science and on the editor review board of the Journal of Marketing, Journal of Science Review, Journal of International Business Studies, and Journal of Retailing. In light of her husband, Jeff's, traumatic injury, she redeployed the specific skills that enabled her psychology and sociology-based academic research, critically evaluating and integrating seemingly disconnected bodies of research to identify beneficial protocols and therapies at the cutting edge of medical research and brain health. Her approach on brain health involves an acknowledgement and understanding of the three primary bodies: the physical, the biochemical, and the energetic body, and how these different systems work together to encourage radical healing. Jeffrey Harmeling is owner and personal trainer at 2020 Fitness, a one-on-one personal training gym in Tallahassee, Florida. After a career in college baseball at the University of Tampa, on May 10, 2021, a life-changing accident on a recreational softball field left him comatose. Upon waking, he was paralyzed, unable to speak, and had severe visual disturbances, and was given low odds to recover. Yet, despite these low odds, he reopened his gym just 5 months later, passed his extensive driving evaluation after 6 months, and now provides support for other people facing the seemingly impossible. His success is largely attributable to his own determination, his faith in the body's innate ability to heal, the widely diverse care team of physicians and therapists working on the cutting edge of nutrition, brain health, supplementation, oxygen, and energy therapies, and the love of his family. When he is not training clients, Jeff enjoys playing with his 5-year-old son and spending time with his wife, Colleen.
Yeah, I am delighted to introduce Colleen and Jeff Harmeling to the show. So how are you both doing?
We're doing great.
We're doing good. Yeah.
We just
doing
came
good.
back from 3 days of intense therapy.
Yeah.
So it was
Break your face therapy.
Yep. We did neurocranial release. We're on spring break right now, so my son is out of school and I am out of classes. And neurocranial release is actually manipulating the facial bones to alleviate any pulling pressure from the meninges on the brain. And it is a unbelievably remarkable, very off the beaten path type of therapy that has, I don't know if you can notice, but his voice is stronger now.
I actually did notice, and it's only been a week since we've spoken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gave a doctor a wristband for my gym because he made it possible for me to go back to work.
Yeah, he was a big part of our healing therapy. This marked about 1 year that we've been seeing him. And in the beginning, we would see him every few months. It had been an entire year since so I guess we've been seeing him for about a year and a half. And but the other thing we did was on the way home, thanks to your recommendations, we had his first IASIC therapy. And that also enhanced his speech, and it enhanced the speed he could speak at. And so his speech is much faster now. He had microcurrents done also. So he had microcurrents in his stomach and microcurrents in his brain after the IASIC. And that combination was really
Got me.
yeah, it definitely, and also what it did, which is really remarkable, Jeff is a baseball player, and I think all baseball players do this. He has his own vocabulary of phrases. So like even just that got me, is like more of Jeff's true voice, so it was really a cool experience. So thank you so much for that recommendation. It's definitely already showing in his
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to get back to those things. I think most importantly, I think people need to know when the accident happened
Absolutely.
and how it impacted his life.
Go ahead. May 10th, 2021.
Yep.
It happened during a softball game. I cannot I cannot remember the accident at all. But they told me that I came in on a fly ball and I slid on my butt to catch it. And the shortstop, also going after the same ball, never broke stride and kneed me in the head. Like an MMA fighter. I mean, I did not remember the accident at all. He separated my skull from my spine, I think.
Yeah,
And
he
I was,
knocked his skull about a quarter of an inch back on his spine.
Oh
And
my
so,
gosh.
I was unconscious for 11 days.
Yeah.
And they told my wife that I would never walk again if I even woke up. So, thank God I'm here and she's the reason.
Yeah, so he did great. He took this hit and was immediately knocked out and was convulsing on the field. And they called 911 and he was intubated as soon as the paramedics arrived, taken to the hospital, put in the ICU. And on the third day, things started to change with how they talked about him. At first they told me, oh, he's had a brain bleed. He'll wake up in the morning, but he's going to be angry. And then he didn't wake up. And then they did several rounds of MRIs or CT scans, actually, no MRIs yet. And then they started saying, if he wakes up, it will probably be 3 to 6 months. And so the language was really different. And they had discovered it wasn't just an isolated bleed, it was 7 bleeds, many of which were in the brainstem. And then later in his recovery, we realized he had had a spinal cord injury, which makes sense with the nature of the injury because he was kind of pushed back. But yeah. And then he was paralyzed. So when he did wake up he actually became responsive on the 4th day, but was considered still in coma stage 2 for, a week or so longer because he didn't have long enough wakeful periods. He would only be awake for a few minutes. He was responsive on the 4th day, but he couldn't speak. And so he could almost inaudibly whisper. And then when he would try to speak, he would just sort of scream, and yell. And then he was completely paralyzed except for his left arm. He couldn't swallow and he had no idea who I was, so he had 32 days of amnesia, complete and total amnesia. And then he, over the course of the last almost 2 years, he's regained probably 95% of himself, which has been remarkable.
That is amazing. That is.
And he was in a tilt recline wheelchair. So it wasn't just that he couldn't walk, he couldn't hold his head up, so he had to keep him constantly angled back with a headrest. And there was like high risks of aspiration because he was having so much swallow dysfunction. But yeah, he's our miracle.
It's still tough to hear that.
Why?
I My personality, I don't like being a burden, and I sound like a big burden.
No, you won't be a burden. I tell him all the time there was no other life we could have lived besides this one. This was always in our plan, and I'm certain of that. I think God built us a boat to help us weather our storm.
Love you.
I love you too. And
Yep.
he taught us many, many things that ended up being wildly important for his recovery. And one of which was that we didn't have to take the sentence we were given from the hospitals. And I think that was the most important lesson that we learned before this accident that helped Jeff beat the odds. I mean, he was given a 15 to 20% chance of ever walking again. We had carpet in our bedrooms, which we took out because we were pretty certain he was going to come home in a wheelchair, and he never did. We just have beautiful wood floors in the house now. So
And she tells one story that really sticks out to me because one of the therapists told her, "I've seen bigger miracles happen."
yeah,
And that guy actually his son goes to school with Z,
yeah,
our son. So I see him every day.
yeah. So in the ICU, when Jeff woke up and he was paralyzed, I was terrified, and not sure if I was going to be strong enough to handle the life that I was envisioning. And he said those 4 words to us, and it changed the course of our recovery. It changed the course of our lives, because he made me really believe that we could be one of those miracles. And now
Yeah.
he is. And so it's just a testament
Yeah.
that, hope is what shapes what's possible in your lives. And if something is possible, you change your behaviors. And it's those behaviors that transform into something bigger.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you felt in the early days,
Me or Colleen?
both of you. Because
I cannot remember the early days. The first thing I remember is being trapped in my bed because they zipped me up in my bed. So that's my first real memory in the hospital. And that was probably 2 or 3 weeks after the accident.
Yeah, it was 30
Um,
days. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I always tell people there are kind of eras in this recovery where, each one comes with their own challenges. And the first era was when he didn't know us, he didn't know me, he didn't know our son. And we were hitting kind of the edge of the standard of care for not knowing. You have a certain period of time where most hospitals will allow you to sort of wander in that space where you don't know where you're at, and then you are transferred to a long-term care facility. And that was terrifying because you start to think, will he ever remember us, and will I ever get to see him again? And
yeah,
then
I don't like that.
and then it was hard. And I remember the day he woke up, I had been wearing his wedding band on my necklace the whole time because I took it off of him in the ICU. And he woke up, and I had just gotten him out of the net bed that he's talking about and put him into the wheelchair. And he said, "Colleen knows my name. What the hell happened? Where's my wedding band? Knows we're married. And then what the hell happened?" And so 2 major accomplishments and then 1 really, really hard question. And so then I had to be the one who told him what had just happened, and what was going to come next, and what we were up against. And I was very hard on him. I never let him, we had a routine. So I lived with him in the hospital that whole time. And I wouldn't let him quit. And that was hard because, it was so insurmountable. I wouldn't give him any breaks either. We would do these things that we would call these like micro brain breaks, where I would bring him back in the wheelchair, tilt him back, make him close his eyes, and then I would put glutathione oil on his forehead, the nape of his neck, and rub it into his temples. And it was remarkable because he was sort of delirious at the time, but he would tell me, I need my pain cream. And he was talking about the glutathione, and it was so remarkable to realize how impactful this cream was on him. And I also blacked out the hospital room. So I took aluminum foil and covered the windows because right outside our window was a street light, so it would never get dark in the room. And then there were flashing lights everywhere. And I know this made our nurses crazy, but I covered every flashing light that they allowed me to, and tried to make it dark for him so that his brain would not be so stimulated when we were trying to have these times of destimulation. And so it was definitely a team effort. He had to do all the hard work, and I just have to keep all the hard memories, is what I tell him.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't remember
unbelievable.
the hard.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of that. So
Yeah.
got
So
you.
God's
Probably
huge.
like your touch from the glutathione oil.
Yeah. Okay. So when did you realize or change the way you were thinking of things?
Yeah, so that was in that conversation with the nurse, and that was on, I guess, day 7,
Mhm.
our last day in the ICU. We were about to get put into a step down unit in the hospital, and I was going through my own inner panic. And I know for most caregivers there's a point person, and then there's this whole army of humans that are waiting to see how you react, to know how they should react. And so I had the fortunate and unfortunate circumstances that this happened during COVID. And so I was isolated by myself with Jeff. There were no other people in the room. And so I fully felt everything that we were up against. And this nurse, Trevor, I said to him, "This is really, really terrible, isn't it?" And he said back, "I've seen bigger miracles." And then he said, "Live in each day. You don't need the past, and you don't need to worry about the future. You just make sure each day is everything you want it to be." And it was such a remarkable and profound statement to me that it has shaped how I live from here forward. I've never been able to live in the day, but when the past is too terrifying and too filled with grief, and when the future is too terrifying and too filled with anxiety, living in the day is a survival strategy that allows you a relief from those two insurmountable emotions. And so I would do exactly that. I would wake up every day. And just before the accident, we had started this practice in our house, which we have a 5-year-old now. So he was 3 when the accident happened. And before bed, we would do our favorite parts. And so we would say, "What was your favorite part of today? When did you feel most like yourself? And when were you most brave?" And it was something we were just doing as kind of like a family game at bedtime. And we did that every day in the hospital. And so then it helped us realize that there are no good or bad days. There are just good or bad parts of every day, even the most terrifying. And that you get to choose what part you remember and what part you hold on to. And so that was a gift, and again, a gift that we were given just before the accident, to have that practice in our lives that helped us so much more than just a bedtime routine. And so
I mean, I'm more and more thankful for her every day. Every time I hear anything that she did, I'm so thankful for her.
Yeah. That's
yeah,
amazing. Because, a lot of people, when they get in the hospital, the husband or wife or other caregiver realizes, "I don't want any part of this," and goes away. And I think it was 21% of marriages fail because of that. But it shows that you can grow stronger together when you take the right actions and just care about each other.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I would tell him, our beliefs have changed dramatically in this process. And I would tell him that I would go to bed at night when he was in his coma, and he would meet me in my sleep, and I don't know. I think in this experience, we have been sort of awakened to a part of life that we could have never believed. I think it was always there, but we didn't believe it because there's so much speaking against it. But this connection, this energetic connection to other humans is more real in our lives than I can ever express. And that meant from the army of humans that were praying for us outside of the hospital, and also for each other. I mean, I told him I would wake up at 2:30 in the morning and have this clarity of what we needed to do the next day, and even the best part of this, or the most illustrative story for this, is on his fourth day, I woke up at 2:30 in the morning. I text all of our friends. We used to live in Tampa, and I text all of them to tell them what had happened and to please start praying. And my best friend called me back. She was awake, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I'm okay. I know that every unbelievably horrible thing that we've ever had to go through has been for a bigger purpose. I just need to know that we're okay. I just need someone to tell me that we're okay." And the very next day, Jeff broke his coma, and the nurse was doing his checks, and he said, Jeff, do you hear me? Do you hear me?" And then he said yes. And then she said, "How are you feeling?" And he said, "I'm okay." And it was like this conversation happening across space and time. And then he would go back into his coma for a little while, so it took a few more days for him to really wake up. But the other part of this was he had gone through a major health crisis 12 years ago, and he had severe autoimmunity that was attacking his body, and we were sent to an oncologist because they couldn't figure out where his pain was coming from, and his digestion had become so poor he wasn't retaining almost anything. And so and then in that moment, we were 28 and 32. We were still very young, and we just decided, we're not gonna make these end of life decisions. And so we went through our kitchen and we removed everything except for meat and vegetables. And so we started eating just unreasonably clean. We got rid of every processed sugar, every grain, every high sugar vegetable, all dairy. And in 2 weeks, Jeff's body started to heal, and it healed so profoundly. And so that gave us this awareness of the body's ability to heal, and that you can choose a path that's different than what's been given you. And without that experience, I'm not sure we could have made some of the decisions that we made, or I could have even with that statement from the nurse, I'm not sure I could have believed it unless I had witnessed him and his body and the abilities of his body to overcome the seemingly impossible. And so, and he, this is 12 years later, so that sentence never materialized. It was just his body kind of screaming at us that we needed to change how we were treating it.
So the keto diet has proved essential for you.
Yeah.
What happened in the hospital? Because they don't have keto there.
Right. So, and this is something we're realizing more and more as we become more connected with other people going through the same experiences as us. We had a non-accidental twist of fate that helped us. So they were going to put him on the traditional tube feed, and I was out of the room. Jeff's dad was in the room, and I came in at exactly the right time when they were about to hang this bag of corn syrup solids, maltodextrin, canola oil, and synthetic vitamins. And all of which, every one of those, all four of those, even the synthetic vitamins, would cause a severe inflammatory reaction in Jeff specifically, but in all humans. Those are inflammatory food-like substances. They are not food. And so I immediately, I grabbed the bag from the nutritionist and I said, these are what he's allergic to. You cannot put this in his body. It will kill him. And he had just transferred to Tallahassee Memorial from Cincinnati Clinic, where they would puree actual food for the tube feed formulas. And he said, "I can't believe we feed these to the sick either." And I said, "I'd much rather." And he said, "You know what? I got a sample on Monday, the day that he was admitted to the hospital, of this tube feed called Real Food Blends. I'm going to bring it up and see if you think this is something he could tolerate." And it is meat and vegetables. And so we put him on Real Food Blends while he needed the tube feed. And then a few days later, he still wasn't swallowing properly, and so they were going to put him on a peg. And I was very adamant that if there was any way to avoid the anesthesia, because the anesthesia is another chemical trauma to the brain, and I just didn't want his already injured brain to have to sustain another chemical trauma. If there was any way we could keep him off of it, I wanted to try. And so I met with this nutritionist and his speech therapist in the ICU, and we came up with this plan that if I could get a thickened enough substance in him, and if he could sustain a wakeful period, so he had to be able to, he wasn't awake enough to eat, was basically the problem. Swallow, he couldn't tolerate, he couldn't swallow very well, but he was able to swallow, and so his swallow was returning. So I made what we now have named the brain shake, and it was a blend of fermented coconut milk, which is super high in cholesterol, that your brain needs. Your brain is mostly cholesterol, and collagen powder, cacao powder, blueberries, MCT oil, and raw egg yolks, pasture-raised raw egg yolks. Each one of them has dramatically powerful nutrients that the brain needs to build. We later added lion's mane mushroom to it, which is a big part of our story. That was actually what I gave to him to get him to wake up out of amnesia. And so we had 3 days of lion's mane mushroom to kind of wake him up. And
I still drink it
every day. He still drinks lion's mane in his coffee. And then, but
so
this,
I also drink lion's mane after talking to you.
yes, it is.
It's
It
good.
is a remarkable substance, and it's a food. It's a food. You can just eat it. So there's really very minimal risk unless you don't tolerate fibers, and then you might not want to try it. But the biggest part of it was I spoon fed him this like pretty thickened thing, half a cup of it. So as soon as his eyes opened, I would sit him up, and then I had the nutritionist and
to swallow and chew.
I would shove this spoon in his mouth, and I would say, swallow, 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 say my name, say my name, and then sometimes say his name, and then had the speech therapist and the nutritionist are standing right there. And it took us 45 minutes to get this half a cup in his body, and he stayed awake for 4.5 hours. It was his first wakeful day. And it just showed us that his body was starving for nutrients, first of all, and that he had the capabilities to come out of this, and so, and then when we were transferred to Brooks Rehabilitation Hospital for an inpatient therapy, and I arrived with a juicer and a blender, and they had a mini fridge in the hospital room, and so I had this army of humans who would make us blended soups and deliver them.
My stepmom.
Yeah, his stepmom, and their church, they would source bones to make us bone broth, and they'd rotate, mostly 3 different soups. I don't think it could taste back then anyway, so it didn't matter because I was spoon feeding him supplements at the same time that I would put into the coconut kefir, and I would juice for him. I would make those brain shakes. So he ended up, when I finally got past the spoon feeding stage, he would eat, 3 dozen raw egg yolks, pasture raised raw egg yolks a day, and he would just ask for more, which would, for most people would, but raw egg yolks are almost a perfectly balanced food with all the nutrients that you need.
Do you want to know more about Colleen and Jeff's tremendous journey? Part 2 is coming on April 14th. Don't miss it. Thank you for listening to Stroke Forward Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like it on Facebook, LinkedIn, or anywhere else you heard it. If you want a copy of Just Say Yes to Life, please order it from Amazon.com. The proceeds go to Stroke Awareness Oregon, an amazing nonprofit that educates about stroke causes, prevention, and treatment options. The book, Stroke Forward, is also available on Amazon.com.